Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next talk. Don't wait for senior engineer to be handed with you. My name is Anna Sher-Wilson. I'll be the moderator today, and I am thrilled to introduce Arit Amana. Arit learned to code at the age of 37 while raising two children and landed her first developer job at 38. Now working at PayPal, she creates content and resources to empower developers and using fintech tools and products. She also mentors women in tech via her nonprofit On Our Time for Tech. So I'm thrilled to welcome Arit to the stage to share her talk with us today.
Hi. Thank you so much, Anna. Welcome to my talk. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to be talking about don't wait for senior engineer to be handed to you. And this is a topic that has come directly out of my life and out of my experience, wanting and, having that ambition for senior roles and the lessons that I learned along the way. So thank you so much for coming. So the agenda for my talk, I'm anchoring the lessons that I'm sharing in my story of how I became a senior engineer. And so I'm going to share like a little bit of my story, and then I will draw the lessons out of what I shared. I'm budgeting about 35 minutes for the talk, and then 10 to 15 minutes Q&A. I love Q&A. It's actually my most favorite part of participating in a conference. So please have your questions ready. Thank you. All right, so just like Anna shared in my bio, I learned to code at 37. Prior to this, I had been a stay-at-home mom for almost 7 years, raising my two young children. And so I attended coding boot camp. I started at 37. I got into the job market. I landed my first developer job at 38. And that was in 2019. I'm sharing the years because the timeline of my story is important so you can keep track. Now, my first role was amazing. I knew next to nothing, right? Like I knew enough to be dangerous, and I knew enough to be able to break production, okay? So my growth at my first role was exponential. I had a lot of mentorship from the more senior engineers on my team, and I also had a lot of support. So I grew in leaps and bounds, and I was able to, learn how to code in production environments as opposed to like your personal local host where you're a judge, jury, and executioner. And so I left that job for a new role in 2020. It wasn't planned. It was an opportunity that presented itself. And I jumped at it because at the time I was working in office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And my daughter at the time was 18 months. And so it was a stressful time. And so this new role was 100% remote. And so even though I wasn't planning on leaving, but I did leave and I jumped at the chance for a remote role. And so in this second role, there was a lot of solidification of the things that I had learned in my first role. So my first role was more about learning how things work in production, writing clean code and all of that. But now in the second role, I was more confident, I was more independent, I was taking on small projects, and I was shipping, features from ideation to deployment. Like it was just a lot more autonomy that I experienced in my second role. And about a year into that role, I was promoted to mid-level. Now, let me say something about like the terms that I'm using. There's some jobs that will not qualify your experience level in your job title. So they'll just call you software engineer. I'm using those qualifiers to sort of communicate what experience level I was in each role, right? So that wasn't my official title, but it was a mid-level role. And after I got promoted, that was when I started forming the ambition that I didn't want to camp out in pre-senior roles for very long in my career. And what I mean by that is I didn't want to spend like 3, 4, 5 years as a mid-level engineer. I wanted to transition to more senior responsibilities and then camp out there and grow and keep growing. Like I I wouldn't mind being a senior or staying senior for 3 years, but I didn't want that for mid-level, or I didn't want that for junior. And so that was an ambition that I developed in this second role. And so that was when I decided that I was going to aggressively pursue a promotion to senior in my current role at the second company. Okay. And so this is the first lesson I want to share. Was in this second role was where I learned that my greatest allegiance was to myself, right? And so it's important to have a clear vision for your career. I think this is like the foundation. Up until this role, I was still in that mindset of, oh, I'm here for the company. It's all about the company. It's all about what I can do for the company. I was very company centric in my sort of value mindset. But that began to shift in this second role. And I started thinking of my career as the company, right? So I'm working in a company, but the company that means the most to me is actually my career. And I am the CEO of my company. That is my career. And so a vision is important. I think it can be so easy. I say easy because it was the case for me. It can be easy to sort of melt into the background of the company. You kind of melt into the company and it's all about the company, and you're thinking about your value in terms of how the company sees you and not necessarily how you see yourself. And so you don't ever want to assume that other people will do more for you than you do for yourself. This was the beginning of me beginning to take ownership, not over just my career, but over the trajectory of my career. Prior to this, I was of the mindset that, oh, you know, the company knows, they'll see, they'll understand. And so for me, that's like the first point, is having that clear vision for your career. You don't necessarily have to know like 20 years in advance, but even if it's 3 years, the clearer that vision is, the better it is. Okay. So after this promotion, I kept working. I was proud. I was excited. I kept working hard, right? I had a performance review soon after my promotion, and I got feedback along the lines of, you know, you need to ask questions more. If you're stuck on something you're working on, don't spin your wheels for too long. Ask questions, reach out for help. I was also encouraged to gain a deeper understanding of the code base. So these were like the key pieces of feedback that I received at my performance review. And because they were coming from managers, not just my own manager, but sort of higher level folk, I felt like, oh, okay, they're telling me or they're sharing with me what's going to help me achieve senior, right? Get to that senior promotion. I just made that assumption because, oh, these are managers. Of course, they have my best interest at heart. Of course, they're thinking about me and my goals and my trajectory. So that was an assumption that I made. And so I started doing that. But then I realized that I was doing more of the same. So yes, they're encouraging me to ask questions, but I had been asking questions. They're encouraging me to, you know, not spin my wheels, learn the code base, but that's a gradual process, right? Like you're not going to learn an entire code base in a week. So I realized that even though these were like good feedback points, they weren't really groundbreaking. They were kind of like what I had already been doing. And yes, I'm being encouraged to do them more, but they didn't feel as actionable as I wanted them to feel. So there was a disconnect in my spirit. I felt like, I know they're coming from a good place, but this isn't really connecting internally with me in terms of what I could be doing to get me closer to that promotion. So even though I felt this inside, I didn't speak up. I didn't give any feedback back. I didn't say anything about how I felt about this feedback. Again, because I'm trusting, because these are managers. These are head of engineering folk, right? And so they must know what I want. They must know what I deserve. They must know what I need to do. And so again, that implicit trust, even though internally I wasn't really connecting with what I was being told. So I kept my head down And I kept working hard. I was working hard. I was cranking out tickets. I was, code review. I was attending every meeting, not just engineering meetings, product meetings, design meetings. Like I was all over the place, like an Energizer bunny, just working hard, 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 because of course they're going to notice everything that I'm doing. And so in late 2021, so this is getting to the tail end of my second year at the company, my manager changed. And it was a bit of serendipity because, he ended up being the mentor that I had in my coding boot camp. So we kind of came full circle. It was a really precious moment. And so at my year-end review, we talked about my ambitions, just like I had shared with my former manager. I also brought this manager up to speed on my ambitions. And so I shared with him everything I had been doing. I showed him my work, my tickets. I've been working hard. I've been asking questions. I've been taking on challenges. I shared the whole nine. And so he was silent in the meeting. After I finished talking, he was like, okay, let's reschedule this. I'm going to go crunch some numbers. And when he said that, I didn't know what he meant. But I was like, okay, we're going to have a follow-up. So I'll kind of see, what he's coming back with. And so in the follow-up meeting, he shared a number of observations, right? The first thing he shared, he was like, Ari, you are doing at least 2 to 3 times more code review than anyone else on the engineering team. Now, that was surprising. I knew I was doing a lot, but I didn't know it was to that volume. And what he termed that was support work. Not that it's not necessary, but he said, Ari, no one's getting promoted for the amount of code review they're doing. And he just said it like that, just no sugarcoating, nothing, he talked about my projects. He said, I read through all your PRs, all your pull requests. I read through all your retrospectives, and you've been working hard on a lot of projects, but none of them are mission critical. He said, none of them are high priority, or maybe they're just high priority adjacent, but none of them are high priority. He also pointed out that even though I had been involved in many projects, I hadn't held a leadership role in any of them. And so even though I was working hard, the buck always stopped with someone else. Someone else was ultimately responsible for the delivery of those projects, and it was never me, right? And then he also pointed out that a lot of my work was low visibility. And so personally, I'm feeling very accomplished and proud of the work I'm doing. He said, but nobody else is seeing this work, from what he gathered in his number crunching, right? And so this session was really hard. This meeting was hard because basically my manager was telling me that a large part of my work wasn't promotion worthy, even though it was hard work. And even though I was proud and I was feeling accomplished and I was learning a lot, but he said it's not promotion worthy. It's helpful. People are grateful. They're telling you thank you. They're telling you good job. But it wasn't promotion worthy. He says because it's not necessarily directly moving the needle in terms of the company's bottom line. This was very hard to hear. I remember actually tearing up because I felt like it was hard not to feel that my effort was wasted, even though I knew it wasn't, right? But it was hard not to feel that way. And so what my manager communicated to me was essentially in the decision room, it will be a little hard to present you as a key player. A hardworking player, yes. A player that is doing things that's helpful, yes. But in terms of key, in terms of significant, he was like, no. So you're not moving the needle and you're not actually getting closer to what it is you want. And so it was really hard to hear. And so this was when I learned about like the metrics of a promotion, right? There's a difference between the everyday work you're doing and the work that fulfills promotion metrics, right? Promotion metrics vary from company to company. So what I'm going to share is what I think is more general, but there's always going to be additional aspects of those promotion metrics that you need to figure out at your company because they do vary. So there's common themes with promotion metrics, high priority projects, okay? Like how close is this project to moving the needle, improving the bottom line of the company directly. You're always going to have direct improvement and indirect, but the closer you get, the better. And highly related to high priority is also high visibility projects. Okay, like how often is this project touted in the company, right? What is the visibility? Do people know? Is it easy to sort of bump into the aspects of this project in the company? High visibility is also a promotion metric. And then this is one that I really needed to learn. It was hard for me to learn this, but you want a low to moderate volume of what I call support work. Now, support work is necessary. It's the work that supports the work. For example, for engineers, code reviews. Okay, code reviews are very important, but in my opinion, it's support work. You're supporting the work that's going to move the company forward, right? And you want to make sure that in terms of volume, you are not skewing hard on support work as opposed to high visibility or high priority work. Right. And so it's a balance. I'm not advocating that you don't do support work. Everyone has to pull their weight. I'm talking more of the balance of the volume of work that you do in that category, right? You must understand whatever rubric or framework that your company uses to decide on promotions, right? That shouldn't be a black box, okay? If those metrics are a black box, that's a problem. It shouldn't be, right? And you need to understand it. Don't just assume that hard work will get you there, right? Now, there are some companies that lack a formal leveling guide. Like a leveling guide is a guide that like shows the different levels of responsibility and the competencies and skills that are expected at each of those roles, at each of those levels. Some companies, particularly early stage startups, for example, they may lack a formal guide, but that doesn't mean you still can't get the information. So what you want to do is you want to talk to the people who promote, or you want to talk to the people who are as close as possible to the people who promote. Some companies stay opaque about the people who actually decide promotions because they don't want to expose those people to undue influence, and that's fine. But you want to get as close as you can to that information, even if there is a lack of a formal guide. Okay. All right. And so positioning yourself for a promotion. So these are action steps. All right. So we talked about a vision for your career. And the reason why I keep saying that is because if you don't have like a clear vision for what you want out of your career, if you run up against resistance in self-advocating and self-promoting, it will be easier to quit. All right. So the fire of your self-advocacy is the vision that you have for your career. The next step is you want to get clear on the promotion metrics for your company. And so, for example, one-on-ones and skip levels, when you have those meetings with your manager and with your skip level, you want to refer frequently to the leveling guide. However you've decided what it is, you want to consistently keep drawing the connection between what you're doing and what you're accomplishing and those competencies that are expected at the level you're gunning for. Okay. The purpose of that is you want to lay that subconscious link in the mind of your manager, in the mind of your skip level. You want them to know that you're not just working hard, but you have an ambition, you have a focus, you have a goal that you're heading for. And so whenever you have your one-on-ones, now maybe not every single one-on-one, you don't want to appear neurotic, but you want this to be a frequent thing that you discuss in your one-on-ones and your skip levels, right? You also want to get clear on what I call the promotion players. And what I mean by that is the people who make those promotion decisions. The reason I say that is because a lot of people think that just because they have a manager, that manager automatically is going to advocate for them, or that manager has access to the decision-making room. That is not always true. There's many companies that managers are just in the line, okay? They're just there to assess your work and pass on the report. They literally have no decision-making power or even decision-making influence. And so don't just assume that it's only your manager you need to have these conversations with. Figure out who the promotion players are in the company and do what you can to be visible to them. Do what you can to have face-to-face time with them. A lot of companies now have skip levels, which is having meetings with people above your manager. But even if that isn't a practice at your company, you can do what you can to get in front of those promotion players. One more thing I like to share is it's a good idea to have a promotion timeline. don't just communicate that you are gunning for a promotion, but have a timeline in mind, okay? Some companies have a certain season in the year where they do promotions. Other companies have promotions on a rolling basis. It doesn't matter what the company's schedule is. It makes sense for you to have a timeline for yourself. There's just something about having a timeline that makes it like applies a little pressure on the delivery of a result, okay? And when it comes to your promotion, you want a timeline, 6 months, 9 months, craft a timeline and make sure that you keep communicating that with your manager and whoever the promotion players are. Okay. All right. You want to boldly ask for opportunities, okay? So the leveling guide, there's competencies expected. Ask for those opportunities. Don't wait for them to give it to you. Okay, the competency of leadership, ask for opportunities where you can lead. All right, you want to document your work, both personally and externally. What I mean by that is if you have like some sort of like achievement, roster at your company, or there's a newsletter, it's not just enough to document your achievements personally for your own records. You also want to document them for people in the company to see. Ensure that you are properly credited for your work. That's important as well. There was a story in my second company where we were working on a project and we were going in the wrong direction. And I recognized that and I rectified our direction. I said, no, that's not going to work. We need to go this way. And we went the way that I recommended and everything went well. Well, in the project retro, the team lead who was typing it up, when they got to that part of switching direction, they kind of wrote it like, oh, we just decided to change direction. And I was like, no, that's not gonna work. And so I emailed them and I was like, hey, this change in direction was the direct result of my input, right? Yes, we agreed, but I am the one that brought it to the table. And I would like that reflected in the retro report. And they graciously agreed. And they changed the retro report to reflect the fact that I was the one that brought about that change in direction. So you want to advocate, you want to make sure that you're properly, anywhere your work is talked about, you want to be properly credited. Self-advocacy and self-promotion does not make you a bitch. Okay, this is a mental block that I know I experienced and many of us as women experience. It doesn't make you a bitch. Okay, you can be empathetic toward others and also advocate for yourself at the same time. Okay, they're not mutually exclusive, right? So if you have that mental block, it pays to work through that. I work through it in therapy. I work through it, on the job. But you are not being bitchy by making sure that your personal advancement doesn't suffer, because of teamwork or team player. All right. And then finally, you always want to be ready to leave for more empowering pastures. Okay. Sometimes it's just not working out. Sometimes you're just not getting the sense that you're being properly recognized and you're really able to make traction toward your career ambitions at a particular company or in a particular setting or on a particular team, whatever the unit is. And so you always want to be ready. Okay, stay ready so you don't need to get ready. Always be ready to leave. Always be ready to find an environment where it can better serve your goals, as you contribute your skills and awesomeness to the company. All right. And so in early 2022, so late 2021, I had that, come to the table moment. And so in early 22, I started working now in line with my understanding, promotion worthy activities and all of that. But I was fired. I was fired from that company before I could clinch the promotion, but I was working hard. I carried what I learned into my job search. Okay. I was disappointed, at being fired, but I carried what I learned into the job search and I only targeted senior roles because not only did I know I was ready, but I had the work. Again, with that promotion worthiness in mind, I had the work to demonstrate that I was ready for those responsibilities. And so I landed a role at PayPal. I'm currently a senior engineer at PayPal. I'm actually gunning for staff engineer at the end of this year. We'll see if it works out. We'll see. But I'm not stopping. So yeah. That was my story and the lessons that I learned. So thank you so much for listening. I'm not sure if I am at the 30-minute mark. I wasn't tracking, but I'm ready for Q&A.
It's perfect. We have a lot of questions.
Okay.
So my colleague's going to put them on the screen and I'll read them to you. So this was a really interesting question from Rachel. In your opinion, is it valuable or dangerous to compare yourself to colleagues in the role that you're aiming for on top of the leveling framework?
That's an excellent question. I think it depends because the thing with comparison is what are you comparing, right? Like there's aspects of the person's personality and just sort of like natural je ne sais quoi that it doesn't make sense to compare because you're two different people. But if it's in terms of like maybe the way they approach their work or the way they follow through or sort of like there's aspects of their professional activity that you see contributes to either what they accomplish or where they're able to go, then it might make sense to emulate those, right? So you really want to be careful like what you are comparing. Yeah.
That's a really great point. And then so Jocelyn asks, how do you get comfortable with self-advocacy? When you said the like, don't be afraid it's not as being hard to work with, like that slide blew up the chat. So there's a lot of people commenting on it, but Jocelyn sums it up nicely of how do you get comfortable with self-advocacy?
It's a process. It's a process. It starts with your sense of value, right? Like I'm a huge proponent of therapy. Because therapy changed my life, right? It really starts with your sense of self-worth. That's where it starts from. And once the journey of self-worth never ends. So it's not that like you say, oh, now I have self-worth. No, like it's going to be layers and layers and layers. But once you start on that journey, I think it becomes easier, first of all, to start practicing, effective boundaries. Okay, typically that's one of the first things you start doing when you get like a sense of your self-worth. One of the first things you start doing is you start enforcing better boundaries, right? And then with those boundaries in place, you're able to then start advocating for what you want. You first start with what you don't want, right? That's the boundaries. And then you move on to what you do want. And that is stepping out and saying, I deserve this. I'm ready for this. I'm worth this. Give this to me, right?
So yeah, Claudia wants to know, what skills did you work on to become a senior? There was a bunch of people asking that. Yeah.
That's a good question. I think one of the defining characteristics of a senior role is not necessarily knowing more. People confuse that. It's not that you have to know more than everybody, but there's a very strong element of responsibility, right? So one of the things I started doing was I asked for the opportunity to be responsible for a project. Actually responsible. And so what does that mean? Writing up the specs, for the tasks, writing up the tasks, assigning the tasks, leading the meetings, closing communication loops. Somebody said something here, another person said something here, and you bring that together and you make sure everyone's on the same page, right? So I started doing that more and more. I wasn't just a participant in projects. I asked to lead them. I asked to see them to completion. If there was a bug, I was on it, finding the person to fix it, right? So it's a lot of sort of showing initiative and being willing to be responsible ultimately. So someone else may mess up, but you are ultimately responsible for how that project turns out. Yeah, once you start showing that, you begin to show that you're ready for that responsibility. Yes.
I think one of the kind of strongest parts or the strongest message that people are going to leave this talk with is like the support work, really defining that issue. When you said that, like, I felt that. I think a lot of people felt that, and yeah, it might be uncomfortable at first to like do that, but exactly.
It certainly is. And I think as women too, right, based on culturalization, socialization, it can be easy for us to gravitate to that support work. Mm-hmm. It was for me, right? Yeah, so you're right.
So another question is, should we directly ask them questions, what we should do to get to that senior level, or do we dance around it? Can you just—
No, don't dance around.
What do I need to do? What do I need to do?
Yeah, don't dance around. Ask them. That's what I meant by, discovering the promotion metrics for your company. or your team. Like for really huge companies, you never ever interact with the company. It's more your team or your department, right? But you want to ask for them directly out front. And then also recognize, or try to figure out who the promotion players are. It may not be your manager. Don't assume that your manager has any decision-making power. If they do, great, but just don't assume that. Yes.
Another question. Here's a comment from Amy, who's also works for one of our sponsors, that this is also true, and you can keep a hype doc explicitly aligned to the company's engineering rubric. And this was a huge help for Amy, working with the manager, the mentor, to choose the actual work that would help prep me for promotion to senior.
Yes, I think we need to dispense with the idea that the company knows best. My manager knows best. My team lead knows best. No, you know best. You know best, yes. So don't just assume that when they assign work to you, it's with the mindset that, oh, this is their ambition. No, you need to take charge of that process. Yes.
Yeah, it's in the mindset of the company needs certain things done. So Michelle is asking, any advice for overcoming wondering if you will be good enough to ever become a senior developer?
You're never going to feel good enough. I always say, there's something I tell my mentees: you can be ready or you can feel ready. There's things you can do to be ready. Those are action points. Those are things you can actually do. But that other thing, feel ready, don't wait on that. That could never come. I know for me, there's things that I've done that I never felt ready for, but I always focus on what can I do to be ready? What are those distinct practices and action steps that I can take? And what I do is I put confidence in that. If I do these specific things, that will make me ready, but they may not make me feel ready. Those are two different things. So always focus on being ready, right? The feeling ready, if you feel it, wonderful. If you don't let that stop you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And so, going back to the beginning of your journey a little bit, any advice for a new developer starting this career later in life? Because we talked a little bit about your acceleration. I have a feeling that might connect to your experience, but would love to hear more about that.
I think one of the most important things is let go of the feeling that you're late. Okay. Let go of that feeling. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to go back in time? What are you going to do? Right. So it is what it is. And so let go of that feeling and have a growth mindset. Believe that there's nothing you can't learn. Start working on that. Yeah. And then, as you're learning, particularly for developer, like coding, make sure that you prioritize understanding why code works. Don't emphasize just getting it to work. I know a lot of new developers, all they care about is, yay, it worked. Okay, but why did it work? Right? And that's what's going to increase your understanding exponentially. Yeah. But good luck. Good luck. It's an adventure. So I'm proud of you.
Another really interesting thing that you brought up is that when you're in a situation where your manager is not the person making the decisions about promotion, so how do you deal with a situation when your team itself is not important for your director?
Ooh, that's a really good question. It sucks, to be honest, right? But it's like a reality. I think it comes down to your ownership of your career, right? So there's the aspect where you need a job, you got bills to pay, you ain't trying to depend on nobody else, okay? So that's like real life. And so you do what you got to do, right? If it means remaining on the team, that's what you got to do, right? To keep body and soul together. But you want to start strategizing. Okay, now this is not going to be overnight, but if you are on a low priority team to start with, you want to start strategizing. How are you going to either move internally in the company, or how are you going to change companies and make sure that you do get on a higher priority team? And so it's a balance, right? You need to pay your bills, right? So you do what you got to do. But at the back of your mind, on the weekends, downtime, you need to start strategizing, because your career is your company and you are the CEO. You are responsible. Yes.
So Nadia asks, when can we establish the limit between overworking and working on getting recognized for a promotion?
Oh, this is such a good question. Oh my gosh. I think intuition plays a role, right? Trust your intuition, right? Trust your intuition. Typically, like I said, the work that helps you toward a promotion tends to be high priority as defined by the company and also has high visibility, higher than others, I would say, yes. And so those are the two characteristics that will help you. And that's according to the company, right? Overworking, you need to trust your intuition. I think there's a difference between, like, I know what it is to overwork in support work, right? So you want to think about what is the nature of the work? Is this going to move the needle? And then you need to lean into your intuition in terms of if the work is getting to the place where it's becoming damaging to the psyche or damaging to your sense of, just your sense of usefulness. Like you kind of have to decide that for yourself. But I think if you make sure that it's high priority, high visibility, and that has been communicated publicly by the company, at the very least, even if you do have to work a little harder, you're working in the right direction. Yes.
Great answer. So Na-Lin says, and I saw this question in the comments, so I was excited to get to it. How do you feel comfortable to say no when someone asks for support work from you?
This is an excellent question. Okay. So I'm going to start by saying the answer has to be no, right? Particularly if you get a sense that you're doing more than most, which was my situation. And so, but then how, right? It's the tact. So it might be something like, I would love to help, but I'm working on high priority things right now. Or, this is going to have to take a back seat to what I have going on right now. Or you could offer to be helpful. You could say, could I help you find someone who has the bandwidth for this work? Yeah. The tact that you use to answer is going to vary, but you need to settle within yourself that the ultimate answer is no. Yes.
Yeah. I love that, putting it back on the company priorities.
Yes.
There's really no argument with that.
Right.
So Monsi has a follow-up, which is, when applying for a new job, how can you determine the priority of the team that you'll be working on?
You can ask. It's one of those questions it's good to ask. You can research what the priorities of the company is, like in the news, on their website. What do they talk about, their key, like their key goals or their key mission statement? You can ask, but these are not things you need to guess at, right? Even in that first round with the recruiter, whoever, ask the question and pay attention to the answer. Yes.
Thank you. So for our next question from Crystal, I've been hesitant to go for a senior dev promotion because I'm not in love. This is a classic question. I'm not in love with programming. I love advocating and helping people. I want to move into a role where I can focus on that. Should I aim for promotion in my current role first?
That's an excellent question. So I'm assuming that your current role is more technical. You're coding, you're shipping, you're cranking out tickets. That's fine. It's actually perfectly okay to be more on the people side of software development, because who are software developers? They're people. Okay. And so first of all, don't hesitate any longer. Okay. Let this be your clarion call. And I think what you can start doing is look for opportunities to manage. Okay. And because you're in a more technical role, you're probably going to come up against opportunities to manage technical projects or the technical aspects. But the key thing is now you're managing. It could be a task, it could be a project, it could be an epic. You want to start moving into those responsibilities of managing, right? And then keep communicating your desire. Communicate your desire to be on managerial track. Communicate that. And as you start managing, whether it's projects or epics or, whatever level of responsibility, begin to lean into, like, for example, suggest one-on-ones with the people the people who are on the project. Suggest one-on-ones. And in those one-on-ones, talk with them about, okay, what's stumping you? Could I help you locate some resources? Like, it's not called for. They're expecting you to deliver the project or the epic, right? But you are flexing your managerial, advocating and helping people chops. You're doing that, right? And so you demonstrate that even though it's a more technical project, and just keep communicating your ambition to be more like a people-focused manager in the development space. And you need to be a developer to do that, because if you're managing developers, then you need to understand your world. And so it's not like two separate things. It's actually together. Yeah. So I wish you all the best. Good luck.
I actually just read a blog about this recently, about like senior people who become senior for years versus like skills. So I'm thrilled to see this question from Rachel, who says, I know a lot of devs who believe seniority is 100% tied to years experience. Have you experienced this mindset, and how do you deal with it?
It's not 100% tight, okay? Because years of it, like if you do the same thing for 2 years, are you more experienced than someone who's done like, say, 3-4 things for 1 year? You know what I mean? Like, and so it's not 100% tied to years experience. And actually that is a strong gatekeeping tool that we experience in this community. I think experience, in addition to number of years only matters if it is deepening your expertise and, giving you exposure to the things that you're going to become expert at. That's when number of years matters. But number of years doing the same thing doesn't help anyone, really. And so if you come up against this mindset, you can argue that it's more than just number of years. It's what you're actually doing and the competencies that you are demonstrating, right? So it's not just number of years. To me, it's a bell ringer for gatekeeping. When you see people like, it's gatekeeping, and you want to, again, strategy, right? Is it something you can weather, or do you need to bounce? Like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of the blog that I just mentioned that just said, if someone's doing the same thing for 5 years and then they go to a new company as a senior, but it's not the same thing anymore.
It's not. Yeah.
So it's a very different situation. So here's from Mary. What are your favorite ways to hype yourself up and feel good about your career?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a combination of things. So first of all, I make sure I'm never the smartest person in the room. Okay. I'm never the smartest person in the room. I always surround myself with people that I can learn something from, and people who make me feel humble and sort of help me, stay in that student and learner, place. But I also make sure to surround myself with people who believe in me, right? And who see my potential. Now, this is not necessarily on the job. This is just in my tech community, right? And then, girl, listen, like you just have to look in the mirror and be like, you are badass, right? Like, you think about your accomplishments, like you think about what it is you've been through, and you give yourself credit for that. You build that mentality of, there's nothing you can't do. You may stumble a little bit, but you're going to get over it. Like, you kind of build yourself up mentally. Therapy helps. It helped me.
As we wrap up, I want to just quickly mention, because we have a lot of people new to tech, and you were talking about gatekeeping, and just 10 seconds, like what does that mean? And then we're going to wrap up a little.
So gatekeeping is a practice where, this is my opinion, so this is not official, okay? This is not dictionary. In my opinion, gatekeeping is the practice of using irrelevant aspects of what is required for a role or a job, using irrelevant aspects to make people feel that they don't belong or they don't deserve to be in those roles, right?
Thank you. So we're nearing the end of part 1. So I just want to share some of what's going on in the chat. Everything you say, I'm like, oh, I'll put that on a t-shirt. Oh, merch, like, all right, merch. But yeah, so we're having, like, people are saying like the nuggets, I want this in an audio book. We are also so appreciative for your advocacy for therapy. It means a lot to us at Women Who Code, and the self-care aspect is so important. All right, we're wondering if if you want to be found on the internet and where people can find you, we'll put that in the chat right now.
Yes. So my key website is arit.dev, arit.dev. I'm very active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Arit Developer. That's where I'm most active. Instagram, TikTok, not so much, but Twitter. Those are the two ways you can reach me. My email is hello@arit.dev. That's my email. Yeah, so Twitter, my website, or email, you can reach me that way. I'm also on LinkedIn, Arit Developer as well on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me there as well. Thank you all so much. I'm feeling the love. Thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you all so much. And it is recorded. Everyone's asking, is it recorded? This was recorded. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we're wrapping up part 1. There is group networking going on for the next hour in the sessions. So if people have time, we can go and continue the conversation there.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. I love you all, and crush it, crush it, crush it, crush it. You're doing amazing. I'm so proud of all of y'all. Thank you.